Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for being with us for another installment of Quad City Symphony Orchestra Concert Conversations, the video edition. We want to thank Chris Connolly of Wells Fargo Advisors for very generous support of this series, and special thanks, of course, to the music director and conductor of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, Maestro Mark Russell Smith. And I'll say Happy New Year. We haven't seen each other.
Yes, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Yes.
I want to thank you for the program you're putting together for the February Masterworks concert, which will be performed, of course, February 3rd and 4th at the Adler Theater in Centennial Hall. But you've got some amazing works, as has been the practice, some things that most of us have never heard, and some things we can't hear often enough. So if you don't mind, unless you have some preparatory comments on the whole thing, I'd say we dive right into Franz Joseph Haydn and his depiction of chaos from Die Schöpfung, the creation.
Right. Well, I mean, if there's Abel, if there were ever a table setter for a nature program, you would think the creation of the earth would be about a very appropriate thing. I mean, the creation, the oratorio is for lots of singers and chorus and a multi huge long oratorio, and the depiction of chaos starts it. The whole thing starts out, and chaos is a relative term for a classical composer. This is about as chaotic as, I guess, someone who in the classical world, the classical music world, there were forms, there were structures, there were things that composers poured notes into. That being said, I mean, Haydn certainly pushed the envelope in a lot of ways, but there's certain things harmonically and instrumentally that just had to be. And so Haydn's depiction of chaos, like 3 against 2 is about as chaotic as things get. I mean, certainly the harmonies and just the kind of suspendedness of it, and I mean, it's a very pictorial. I mean, he very much tone paints. And so we get little dots of sound here and there. We have things that clash. We have long suspended segments. And so, it's a child of its time. And that's kind of what makes it interesting. I mean, if we were to say, find me a 21st century chaotic work, it would sound a lot different than Haydn's version of chaos. And we go straight, so it ends quietly, and then in the context of the creation, the piece, we go into, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and the narrator starts right away after this. In our case, we're going to go to Mary Howe, Stars and Sand. We'll go uninterrupted from the last note of Haydn into Mary Howe.
Well, how did Mary Howe get onto your radar screen and become part of, and a very logical and lovely part of, the concert as a whole?
Well, it harkens back to my days as music director of the Richmond Symphony. And Mary Howe, was from Richmond, and then I think settled in Washington, D.C. And so kind of a local interesting story, of a female composer at that time having pieces played by the Vienna Philharmonic, by Leopold Stokowski. This is at a time when female composers were very rare. And so Richmond, and actually not many people in Richmond, frankly, knew about her either. It was really, I was trying to recall who introduced me to her music, but it was obviously a Richmonder and someone who had great interest in that. And so just this person put the score in front of me, and I was like, what a great story, what an interesting story. And thematically, things fit really well, of course, with the nature program. And so I don't even remember, the program in Richmond. It was probably 15 years ago or so where I played the music. But when you are a thematic programmer, and when you're trying to create interesting programs that have great diversity, and that have great back and forth, and that have both similarities and great differences, then you kind of keep a list in the back of your mind. Well, this is a good nature piece. This is cool. This might work here. And so I thought introducing Mary Howe to Quad City audiences was kind of a natural outgrowth of that. I was talking to Brian Baxter, our executive director, and it's like, I mean, this is the kind of programming that kind of everybody does now, but like, I guess we were doing it back. I was doing it back like 15 years ago, thinking about maybe underrepresented composers, interesting stories, not just the tried and true. The tried and true, the Beethovens and the Stravinskys, I mean, I love them more than anything else, and Mozart's, but you know, there are a lot of other composers out there and a lot of other music that just is underplayed. And so our audiences want to hear that as well.
Well, yeah, it's there's so much that we don't actually get to, and I'm anxious to hear more about this. But just reading some of the things that Professor Jacob Banks has put together for the program notes, it is an interesting concept that these that we're going to hear were written as two separate pieces, but they're very often performed together. Where do you see as
Right.
the logic behind that programming choice?
Well, it's because, I mean, they're short. I mean, they're short. They're, you know, I mean, stars and sand. You know, I mean, again, the nature field, and you know, already it's a bit of a challenge to find the right program where you can put, you know, tuck in 2 4-minute pieces, or you know, like a 9-minute total of 2 pieces. And so putting them together makes lots of sense. I mean, I even think I certainly did them when I did in Richmond. I think they were recorded together. I mean, it's like, it is interesting that 2 of her works that are like, that have births not together, have been kind of, you know, pieced together like that. But for our purposes, it's cool because, you know, we have the creation, we have stars, which is again very dreamy, very almost impressionistic in a way, and then sand, which is, you know, a scherzo, basically a scherzo with, you know, like fleeting around, you know, sand just kind of dripping through your fingers, just the kind of, you know, timelessness of it all. And so, I mean, she absolutely captures that kind of feeling with the sand, you know, in the big way. You can hear the kind of things drifting through, you know. So yeah, it's great contrast, and I think they fit together really well.
Well, and then that tees up a reprise. And this is another thing I love about your bringing us new music is when you have brought us music brand new to us, and then we get a chance to revisit it a little while later. And that's the case
Right.
with Michael Abel's Liquify. So
Right.
remind us about how you first brought this piece to the QCSO.
Well, we had a season, which our patrons hopefully recall, a whole season predicated around rivers. And you know, there's here we are, River City, USA, and I mean, other cities would argue that title, but I'm saying we are. Um, there's so many river pieces, you know, through all, you know, rivers play such a hugely important role in civilization, basically, and so many musicians throughout the ages have written about rivers, descriptive music, and so our whole season was predicated around this idea of, you know, a river runs through the season, basically. And so there was 1 piece or 2 pieces on each of the 6 masterworks that were river related. And so there's that. And then there's the fact that we commission a new work every single year. Something that's in our DNA, which is not in other orchestras' DNA necessarily, is that we want to foster new music and to help composers and bring new works to life. And so I asked my dear friend and from way back, Michael Abels, if he would compose a river piece. And that's all I said. You know, our season is about rivers, and I didn't tell him what river. I didn't tell him anything. I said, like, just boom, there you go. That's the theme. Let your creative juices flow. And so he created, I mean, what he kind of thinks of as like an American Moldau, you know, I mean, scenes on the river, and a busy kind of industrial river. And so, you know, we could intuit that it's the Mississippi or some other kind of big Midwestern river. We're going to say it's the Mississippi. But so basically all sorts of scenes. We have a moonlit scene. We have kind of the churning and then the chugging and low brass kind of representing, I don't know, diesel tugboats or whatever. I mean, just the kind of grittiness of the river. And then ending with, just as many Michael Abels pieces do, just ending with kind of joyous dance, just kind of, you know, sunlight sparkling the river, and then, you know, big flows of water. I mean, it's all about water, and it's all about the play of water. And yeah, and most important, well, I wouldn't say most importantly, but an important fact is we, the Quad Cities, we all brought this piece. This piece exists because of our orchestra, and our orchestra exists because of our patrons. And so we all have played a role in this piece. And now we bring it back in different guise. And so I'm very excited about that. And you can tell us about that.
Well, there's going to be a video component to this too. A wonderful film by Jose Francisco Salgado.
Right.
And I believe this was a collaboration, I mean, with Michael Abels, it definitely
Right.
involved in this. And it will bring together visual imagery with the auditory, wonderful picture of a river. But that was not the case the first time we saw it, was it? Or
The first time what? No, no, no. So Jose, what Jose does is create videos and creates videos of classical pieces.
mm,
And his thing, like actually way back when, but when I first started as music director in 2008, there was a program that I didn't conduct because I wasn't available of the planets. And Jose has created through NASA films and all sorts of things, like a beautiful, basically visual portrayal of the planets.
so that was him. I didn't make
Yes,
that connection.
yes,
Oh, that's
yes,
fantastic.
yes, same guy, same guy.
Yeah.
And so he has done all sorts of pieces. And frankly, I don't know how Liquify got onto his radar. Like, I don't know. But I mean, before we even had any of this idea, he contacted Michael. He heard Liquify somehow and contacted Michael Abels and said, man, this piece cries out for visuals. What do you think? Mike Abel said, sure, I mean, it's fine. And it just so happens the recording that, well, of course, I mean, I don't know how many other performances, I don't know how many other orchestras have performed Liquify, but our recording, our concert recording is the one that Jose used to make the film. And so like when he, like now there are other orchestras interested in presenting it with the video, and so they have our audio performance of it, which is a really good performance. And we've done it a couple different times. We did it, I think, with the kids. Actually, we did a side by side, or we did it on a side by side concert. Because, as you said, it's really important that new pieces aren't just heard once and then put away. And so to have it on this program, I mean, frankly, when I started this program, I wasn't thinking about the video component. That because COVID slowed that down, and I didn't know the timeline of the video part of it. It just so happened that after we had already programmed and had this idea of bringing Liquify back, that the video existed, and so it kind of spurred things on a bit. And so it just now, I mean, it's just come out. I've only seen it in the past like 3 weeks, and of course, it's something that I have to study because I have to coordinate the music of Liquify with the film, and so I have to memorize what happens when and what the musical gestures are and things like that. So it's our piece, it's our community's piece, it's our incredible friend Michael Abel, who just won the Pulitzer Prize, who's famous now for the Jordan Peele films and his opera Omar, which we're going to hear next year. Anyway, it's just a great celebration of that. And now it's a piece that we brought to life in a new form, adding a visual element to it. And so that's all very exciting. And then, of course, there's the tie-in. I mean, of course, the original idea with putting, visuals with classical music was Disney, was Fantasia. And Beethoven's Sixth Symphony was, the first piece on Fantasia, or one of the big pieces on Fantasia. And so, that's just kind of a happy accident. We're not having visuals with Beethoven Sixth, just with the Abels. But anyway, but so there's that.
I don't know if you can show that footage anymore. I'm not really sure.
What?
There might be some prohibitions against it, but
Fantasia. Oh yeah.
well,
Right.
so the great thing is we don't know the particulars of how much Liquify has been performed since the commission, but clearly it's making a statement in classical music if it caught the attention of Salgado to make the film. So that's very exciting. But now you're getting to the reason why I'm joining you here in the Vienna woods with a nice hill, bridge, stream, and all that behind us is because Beethoven, by his own description, said those were the things he was walking over: hills, streams, rocks, under, over, or through, as he was thinking about the work that's going to close the program. And that is the incredibly amazing Symphony No. 6. And I say that with the double entendre of it's incredibly amazing that we've only heard this twice before in the symphony's history.
That's really mind-boggling, considering 109 years old. And it is, I mean, it's such a staple of the repertoire. However, I do understand, because it doesn't end like Beethoven 5 or Beethoven 7. I mean, it's we kind of talk about we in the business kind of talk about, there's the evens and the odds. So the odd symphonies, Beethoven 3, Beethoven 5, Beethoven 7. I mean, these are all fiery, big works that end big, and and then 4, 6, 8, a little less, a little less so. And so therefore, those, if a conductor wants to end a program with a bang, like for surefire applause, then like you don't program the Sixth Symphony. But oh my God, I mean, there's so much richness, there's so much character. And what is the most amazing thing is Beethoven basically was writing the Fifth and Sixth Symphony simultaneously. And so we have the famous fifth, da-da-da-dum, and all the rhythmic energy and all the big triumph at the end, C major triumphing over C minor, and the big, and simultaneously we have a more gentle, we have the scene by the brook, we have the village, we have the villagers, of course we have a thunderstorm, but then we have a Thanksgiving movement, a movement of giving thanks for the storm that's gentle and smooth and so deeply felt. I mean, this music is deeply, deeply felt. Beethoven was just a lover of nature, and it just changed him. And of course, at this time he was just in his own head, basically, because he couldn't hear things. He could see the birds singing, but he couldn't hear them. Tragically, he could see the brook babbling, but he couldn't hear the brook babbling. And so he just loved nature, and it was his way of communing with God, I think. And anyway, so this piece I just love, and it is seldom performed. And apparently this will be the third performance of the Quad City Symphony, and I did the second one.
You did the second one. And when you were talking about Beethoven's love of nature, I came across a quote I had never found before in getting ready for today. Beethoven was quoted once as saying in a letter, "I love a tree more than a man."
The original tree hugger, right?
Well, exactly. And what I find fascinating, and I'm really hoping that people who watch this on video will come and join us at the concert venues, because I want to dive in greater depth around this. But he wrote this over 6 years. I mean, and he was in a beautiful spot that's sort of north and a little west of Vienna, which is actually looks a little bit like what's behind us here, hilly, wooded, lovely. And he would walk around and he would make little notes that he then put together and created this piece. And like you said, he did it concurrently with the Fifth. And what blows me away is that he premiered this in one big Beethoven palooza, where you imagine having a ticket to this and you hear the Fifth for the first time, the Sixth for the first time, the choral fantasy for the first time. I mean,
isn't that's December 8th, right? I think December 8th. And tell me the year, because
I think was it 1808?
I probably, it's something like, because my dream when I was music director of the Richmond Symphony, which was during that time, was to recreate that concert. But like, you cannot do that anymore. I mean, it's just like a 3.5 hour concert. I mean, the audience can't do it. The musicians can't. I mean, it's just like, I really wanted to recreate that concert because, like you said, it's movements of Missa Solemnis. It's the Beethoven Choral Fantasy. It's Beethoven 5, Beethoven 6. I mean, it's mind-blowing how long that program is, how difficult that program is. It's like, but man, what a moment. I mean, if I could choose a date in time to go back. I mean, December 8th, whatever it is. I forget the exact, I think it's December 8th, but anyway, I was dead set on trying to do that, but it's just not to be.
Well, I think I've got it here somewhere. We will find it by the time we're done here. But yeah,
anyway, so like what we did in Quad was for the three movements, the three Stravinsky ballets, 1910, 1911, and 1913. We did it like almost tried to do it exactly 100 years later, 20. And so I love that kind of idea. And so to recreate a concert would be really fun.
It was 1808 and he did it. He was also, he was no dummy. He put that concert together and then dedicated it to Prince Lobkowitz, who was a wealthy patron, and sort of solidified his future there with Lobkowitz and Lichnowsky and all the greats of the Habsburg court. So we are probably going to run out of time for this conversation about the Sixth, but please dwell on one thing for me, and that is, yeah, a lot of us have in our heads the fantasia and the imagery of that, which genius on the part of Disney. But you can't deny, even before anybody thought of a moving picture show, it is a moving picture in your head. As you're listening to the first movement, it's like getting out of the car in a beautiful forest preserve and going for a hike. And it's those feelings. He absolutely nails that all the way through to getting caught out in a storm, which, by the way, in our neck of the woods, if you're ever going to do that, go to Wildcat Den State Park. Best place to be caught in a thunderstorm, right downriver. And then the feeling afterwards, when you're drenched, you're soaked, but yet you're so joyful. How does he do this musically?
Well, I mean, that's the question. It's exactly like you said. I mean, it's like the coach door opens up and here you are. And all those feelings. I mean, and what Beethoven himself said about the symphony is it is more a feeling than it is a description. And so he's not portraying scene, while on one hand he is being cinematic, is that a word? Yeah, cinematic. I mean, he's not saying this happens here, this happens here, this happens here. I mean, it's his feelings and that he absolutely captures that. I mean, through repetition, through depth of sound, through just unbridled joy, through tone painting. I mean, certainly the second movement, the scene by the brook, is tone painting. I mean, we have the same musical phrase, but then we have variations. We have this bird over here this time, and then we have a little ant over here, and then like all the variations of nature. We have the constant, and then we have each time it comes back, there's just something a little bit different. I mean, the key maybe is a little different, but this little detail that plays back and forth. I mean, it's just teeming with life in a super evocative way. And so, I don't know, I just love how it's about the feelings again.
Right.
It's not about the literal depiction.
No, but does he not indicate that in that Szene am Bach, the scene by the brook, that the flute is supposed to be a nightingale and the clarinet?
Sure. Yeah, well, at the end. Then there's actual bird calls, right? There's bird calls, there's cuckoo, there are 3 bird calls.
And the quail.
Right, and the cuckoo, right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So, I mean, that is literal. That's a literal thing, right?
Well, listen, here's another literal thing, friends. If you miss this incredible experience and opportunity, it's your own fault. And I'll say that quite literally and figuratively. We wouldn't want to miss you in any stretch of the imagination. So, but for now, Maestro, I'm terribly sorry, but we're going to have to leave this and carry on the conversation at the front of the stage of the Adler on Saturday night and Centennial Hall on Sunday, February 3rd and 4th. We want you all there. Maestro, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.